Welcome to London, yo.
Is a dance style generated from the US 70s, 80s, recognized for its fast-paced footwork, mainly dance on house music.
House dance became the sort of codified recognition of club dance. So things before house really was just freestyle, club dance, how people danced in the clubs, and house dance became sort of the recognized vocabulary.
It emerged from like queer communities.
There's no limitation to house dance. It's just you come as you are, but you wouldn't stay as you are.
But before this dance style reached the UK, there was this.
The American story's been told. The UK story hasn't been told fully.
How many people know about this?
English people dancing in clubs, like going for it, you know?
New music inspires new dance. When house music was born, it gave birth to house dance too. The American dancers began naming the house moves and steps, laying the foundations of this new dance form.
House dance from New York has always been sort of the recognized factor of this movement, but it wasn't the only movement that was happening on this music.
Meanwhile, in the UK, clubbers interpreted house music in their own way through UK social dances like cutting shapes and skanking. Like the Americans, these UK clubbers weren't professional dancers, but just music lovers who danced freely in clubs with their own UK flavour. Young Brits found a new kind of religion through this black, queer, electronic dance music. The American way of dancing on house music is now the official house dance style we refer to worldwide, but this reached the UK only in the early 2000s. We're here to discuss what happened before the American influence. To fully understand the landscape of UK club dance before the American house style arrived, we have to go back in time.
The dance styles in the UK in the late 70s, early 80s were like a style called boogie dancing and jazz fusion, as it's known. So there was this massive dance scene. Then it goes a bit quiet when hip hop hits the UK. And then when house music hits the UK in the late 80s, early 90s, there is a slight resurgence, but it doesn't really turn into something until the early 2000s. So now we have an official house dance scene / style going on.
One of the guys I always have to mention is Paul Trouble Anderson, because he was the first DJ that was championing house music, American or US garage as it was called then became house. And he was bringing over the artists like Frankie Knuckles and Tony Humphries and Louis Vega. He's our godfather of house music for me.
The sound from Chicago was probably the first to get here. There used to be a TV program called The Hitman and Her. They would go around the country to clubs, and the music was pop music and house music and funk, and people would just be dancing. So it kind of just fit into what was already existing.
At the moment, I think acid tracks.
Just an old pair of ripped jeans because they're comfortable, and a bag of shirts, you know, just easy dancing.
Music we wanted to listen to was not being played on the radio. So you had to go to the clubs to hear it. That's the only way you would hear that music.
I mean, the clubs from my days, I could name 100. There's so many. Mud Club, Raw Club, Maximus, Empire. There's so many. There's too many.
Finding such a rich ground in the UK cultural melting pot, house music developed into new UK genres in the 1990s, and drum and bass, jungle, UK garage and broken beat started to be played at raves and in clubs.
That's my generation. Plastic People in Shoreditch. That was the first club where I discovered broken beat, and I got to meet some of like the bugs in the attic. It was super dark. All you could see was the light from the DJ desk and the bass. The bass was something mad. Astoria, which was in Soho. Plan B in Brixton had Madame Jojo's, that also closed. There was like this kind of thing where like, these are the dancers, like, okay, you're coming like for free and you know? So they knew that like...
Liven up the place.
Yeah, the clientele was quite diverse. There's this club culture the same way there's a pub culture here, where like people will go out just to listen to music or just to have a pint of beer.
When the American house dance style reached Europe, one of the first countries to embrace the movement was France. Thanks to a handful of French dancers who moved to England, house dance started to be diffused and a new UK community was built.
We didn't actually see house dance as a style until Adilo, Steve and Norman came in the early 2000s. Clara came a little bit after, built that infrastructure, started teaching people, started throwing events for house dance in the UK.
Clara being the person who was the kickstarter of sort of the educational proposition, if you want to say, of like the information being taught here and being shared here, is a French woman who came to the UK and provided it. So, you know, in that sense, that image and also that representation, that's always been the identity of Britain.
Belarus, Poland, Lithuania, Italy, UK, Portugal, Italy, UK.
A lot of our scene was built on foreigners as well, not just like creating the style, but like contributing. Yeah. And when people had to go back to like their old country, and that kind of made a lot of us think like, okay, who's actually here from the UK representing in a way, or who's like keeping this like going?
This was something that, especially for me personally, inspired me to do the work, to look and find out what was here. Dances like skanking, shuffling, cutting shapes. Like, again, this is nothing new. This was something that was happening before, but these were things that we were growing up doing in parties and clubs that, again, stem from cultural grassroots communities.
When I think of like skanking or cutting shapes, I thought it was a new thing to when you go in history and you're like, this is what the UK was doing. Now it's like, okay, let me find more back about.
There's been so much influence from others. What are we doing to cultivate and to try to remember and also uphold what we have here?
Shortly after American house dance arrived in Britain, it was adopted and taught to newer generations, slowly transforming the community into professional and semi-professional house dancers. Here is where the shift from clubs to studios, training spots and dance schools happened. The late 2000s generation were some of the last few people who experienced clubbing as the home of house dance.
My introduction to it was like the music, and then being around dancers, then I learned about the movement. Well, I was going to the clubs at like 13. Yeah, I go to clubs at 13, but it was like funky house and it was only a small section. Our dance to that was like skanking. Find out that there's more to it than just the skanking.
Like garage music, two-step, funky house, like these genres were very, very prominent, I think, for people my age or my generation specifically. And it was a party music. For me, was sort of the gateway to the electronic music scene.
Like one thing that I believe the UK has got over other countries is this strong relationship to the music. One of the reasons why I was never like as close to the music is because I wasn't like exposed to the same extent as like these two were. A lot of us have learned this like in the studio. They didn't have this interaction. Clubbing like interaction is interesting to see it not being fully organic in the way like it maybe has been in the past.
You could say it's an unorganic way to learn how to dance to the music, and it's important to acknowledge now like this is just the way that things are now.
If it wasn't for Trocadero, I would have never moved to London. The way it was described to me, it was like, yeah, like just a trainings hub, because I was in a training mindset. I wasn't in a clubbing mindset. Like I was in a mindset of like, okay, how do I get better? In a sense, even though it wasn't a club, it still gave you like a sense of like, again, like a lot of people talk about that, like the sense of freedom, you know? And often like it's a bit cringe. And like Trocadero was really a space where like you was focused on the people that you was with, like the people that you was growing with, you know?
You can have these experiences like so that are very similar to club experiences that aren't necessarily in those traditional environments where you would experience that, you know? And I think that is the difference. This is now what is going to really sort of be the invention of like things to come. We've been quite lucky to kind of have access to both of them, like to go to the party or to go to spaces that could still provide something similar. I would say the one major difference that's really in effect right now is that we don't have a current party that is on a weekly basis into what we experienced like over 10 years ago.
House dance slowly disconnected from the club scene, with more people wanting to learn it, and new teaching and performance job opportunities appearing. But that's not the only reason for the disconnection. The clubs which didn't close in the 2000s had to adapt to this new way of clubbing.
Clubbing culture by now is also a business.
It's about going drinking or getting wasted or, just forgetting your night or, having a one-night stand. Like, generally, the dancers are looked at as being sort of the unusual people or the weird people in the clubs because it's so alien. It will become, again, normalized. Dancers providing the funds, but also public respecting the fact that the dancers want to be here for what they want to do. This would be the dream.
We've done a few things like put up a prize and then get dance people to come in. I know Ian's done stuff like classes to try and introduce the two things together. The dancers have their own events, I find, that they're going to. So in a calendar of events, you almost need to tell people quite far in advance what's going on. Why haven't some of them come? But they're competing or they're doing something else. Whereas back in an era where clubs were really the space to go and dance, you were only limited to that one access point. That's why more people dance there, I feel. Like nowadays you have competition, you have dance classes, you have busking, you have outdoor festivals.
So you can book a studio and turn off the lights.
Outside that door are hundreds of millions of other worlds, and sometimes we throw the door open and say, have some of these tracks.
Now come to us because we share a common language.
Dancers are definitely aware of music, maybe not the same way as music producers are aware of the actual dance.
There needs to be platforms for the people that make music to understand that people like to dance to that music. And these are the reasons why. So please make more of this thing.
Some of the house dancers are now becoming DJs.
Sometimes there are amazing DJs who have no connection to the dance community who can still be able to do those things. Both are extremely important. And I think also, to build off of one another. And the most important contribution that comes from our community when we go out is letting the DJ know, like if we get off, if we do what we do, that's the sign that the DJ is doing a good job. That's also, again, like what I don't think a lot of DJs get to experience nowadays in general, because people don't go out to listen to the music for the most part. They don't get to really know and receive true feedback about what it is that they may play until they have people like us be in their spaces.
It's good to just watch and connect with some of these guys and then you start to branch out a bit more, whereas maybe sometimes you just play a certain regular way.
The UK's a melting pot of cultures, right? So you're gonna get some kind of spark, do you know what I mean?
How dances in the US are the sort of like sparks to new movement. These were the sparks that were happening in the UK. It was the same type of process and the same type of history.
We've not only embraced American music, but we've got all of these different influences musically, and then that's why you've got all these different musical genres that have come out.
Everyone's got it on their door.
But it will depend on the people after us.
Yeah, I think it goes in cycles. Clubs cater for dancers, then they lock them out. Then to get the clientele back in again, they cater for dancers, and then it's this cycle.
Music will never stop, so dance will never stop.
More quality music will be going into the mainstream.
Producers that are going to continue pushing the boundaries of what we know as house music, and that will again then in that sense inspire the movement.
I think it's important to remember the demographic that this music represents, because there's a lot of people who indulge in this music that don't actually support the people that are about this music. And I think again this is something that electronic music is always reminding us that it provides the freedom, the liberation, the openness, and again, the perspective of so many different people. Make the effort to preserve these spaces, to preserve the music.
During the pandemic, there was quite a few clubs that closed. We aren't going to be able to do our event there. But I did get the feeling that last year everyone was happy to be out.
People are just sort of, that's behind us, let's have a good time, and let's really have a good time now. And I think we're moving back to that now. Again, I think people are looking to really go back to partying, which was what it was all about from the beginning. It wasn't about VIP or expensive and guest lists. It was about people coming together, communities coming together and enjoying themselves and being able to express themselves and have a good time.
Yo, that's how we function. That's how we function. trust no one.